Peace, family. Welcome back to the Campaign TV show. I am your host, Brother King Cam, and tonight, the theme for tonight's show is understanding our enemy. Understanding our enemy. And what I'm going to be coming out of is our dear brother, Dr. Wesley's book, Understanding the Assault on the Black Man, Black Manhood, and Black Masculinity. I was reading this book earlier and some things jumped out to me, and I said, look, we got to do a show on this. So for those who are going to be watching this, please share, like, get as many people to check this out as possible, because we want to put out good information, valuable information and content to help elevate our people. So let's make sure that we stay tapped into what's going on, because black media is so important in our community. So, we got to shout out Facebook Live in the building. So again, tonight's theme is understanding our enemy, specifically understanding the mind of our enemy, because he has a particular mind which leads to and fuels his behavior. And when we understand his mind, we'll understand why he behaves the way he behaves. And then we can start to develop solutions that will be proper responses to the behavior that he has and inflicts on our community. The problem is we can't develop the solutions because we don't understand why he does what he does. So understanding our enemy. And if you notice, something popped up in one of the groups that I'm in that talked about how there's a spike in police brutality. And that's the term that is most commonly used. The most proper term for that is domestic terrorism, but we're going to say police brutality. There's a spike in level of police brutality, police aggression, encounters of black and brown people against the police, things of that nature. Is starting to rise up again. And my question to you is, why do you think that is? Why do you think that the enemy now is becoming more aggressive towards us? Why? Because of this social distancing that's been enforced because of the COVID-19. You understand what I'm saying? The aggression of the police is increasing. Well, we got to go and look at the strategy that white supremacy uses to dominate cultures that they feel are inferior. Because there's a global strategy that they've used on a global level to dominate and to capture the indigenous cultures and indigenous people of other continents that they use on a global level, and now they employ those same strategies here in America. But I want to walk you through the whole situation, because walaikum salam, there is a particular mindset that the American European has been given from his brother in the East, which is the European coming out of Great Britain, out of Russia, out of Germany, places like that. Okay? So in this book, Dr. Wesley highlights the global strategy that was used in Mother Africa against particularly the Samburu and the Zulu countries and tribes of Southern Africa to dominate those cultures. And there's a particular way that they did it, and then the Western American European used those same exact cultures in the same exact strategy in the transatlantic slave trade. So I'm going to just give some commentary from the book so I can walk you through this, and then we're going to go ahead and move forward. But I want to lay some foundation. So the global strategy, one of the reasons most people fail to grasp and take seriously the depth of the problem of this assault on the black male is because we assume it to be isolated to a historical American phenomenon restricted to antebellum America. It is not. The American assault on the black man, his manhood, and his masculinity from slavery till today was and is part of a global project, and only by understanding the global project and its methods repeated all over the world can we fully appreciate what is going on here in America and appreciate what the black man in America is dealing with. The white man feminized the black man everywhere he went and gained dominion. Wherever the white man sets his boot, his is the only manhood that is tolerable to him. So, all where he conquers on the earth, he must neutralize the masculinity and manhood of the local men. It is in part of his strategy of domination, and his methods are the same everywhere. So, what the strategy is when the European goes into a land of indigenous, dark, original, or aboriginal people, their goal is to eliminate first the masculinity of that people. They have to completely remove the masculinity of the indigenous people so that his own manhood can be the only manhood in that area. Well, as we are taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that the household is God, man, woman, and then children. So in order to completely eliminate the masculinity or the manhood of the indigenous people, you have to disconnect the man and his connection to the God. His direct connection to the God is what gives him power and dominion over his household, power and dominion over his tribe and society and his culture. So the deity of the black man has to be destroyed, thus destroying the power of the black man. So as Dr. Wesley lays out in his book how pre-colonial Africa, the most dominant masculinity was that of the Zulu tribes. See? So I'm going to get right to it. The masculinity of the Zulu tribe was the most masculinity in Africa, specifically in Southern Africa. So when the Europeans came to colonize that area, they had to first do their research. They don't never do nothing just off the cuff. So their first initiative is to send in people to research, and they do this under the cover of religion. They do this under the cover of religion, or the terminology that they use called missionaries. Now they send the missionaries in to research and to study the tribes and to learn the culture of the people for the whole purpose of turning them from their culture into the Europeanized culture or the Eurocentric culture or religion. This is what they do. But they send the missionaries in first because it's softer. So they want to learn your religion, learn your customs, learn your language, learn your deities, so that they can be able to slowly and subtly turn you towards their Eurocentric beliefs. So in January of 1879, the crack Zulu soldiers of Southern Africa decimated the British Army at Iskawana and Nazane, and I may not be pronouncing that right, humiliating Queen Victoria and handing the British Empire its worst defeat since the Crimean War of 1854 to 1856. In 6 hours, the British Army lost 1,300 of its 1,700 men sent to the battle. 60 British and 300 African auxiliary troops were all that was left standing. Thus began the Anglo-Zulu War. So the first thing is, when they came to dominate the Zulu in South Africa, the Zulus stood up and resisted and fought back and beat and decimated, on top of that, the British Army. Okay? This is what sparked the Anglo-Zulu War. So the British would regroup and come back, ultimately destroying the Zulu army on July 4th, 1879, and ending the war, making Zululand a British colony in 1887. The British never forgot the humiliating defeat, like the French to this day never forgot nor forgave Haiti for their marvelous and humiliating defeat of Napoleon and the French army. Colonel Sergeant J.W. Burnett of the 99th Regiment of the British Forces wrote about the Zulu to a friend. After Nazane, I never thought Africans would make such a stand. They came on with utter disregard for danger. Our school used to laugh about these Africans, but I assure you that fighting them is truly earnest work and not child's play. Sergeant E. Jervis of the 90th Regiment confessed too. I confess that I do not think that a braver lot of men than our enemies in point of disregard for life and for their bravery under fire could be found anywhere. So after the British Army was initially defeated by the Zulus, they regrouped, defeated the Zulus, and conquered the territory. So now Zululand had become a British colony in South Africa. But also, upon their victory over the Zulu, they began to study the Zulu culture. Now that they have conquered the land, they studying the culture. So now they nestled into South Africa and they studying the Zulu men and the culture of Zulu land. Why? Because their ultimate goal is to overthrow the lasting masculinity in that area so that white European masculinity can be the only masculinity. Because when you destroy the masculinity of the indigenous people, then the indigenous women and the indigenous children have no protection. And thus they become slaves to the European that is now in power. Colonial white supremacy can only be in power if they decimate the black existing power structure. So now they're in Zululand and they're studying the culture. Why? Because they have to dismantle all of the masculinity there. So the Zulu masculinity made the Zulu kingdom the chief threat to the advancement of white supremacy in Africa, as James Gump writes, a defensible self-governing white dominion could only exist if black resistance was eliminated. The Zulu kingdom represented the principal African obstacle. Pre-colonial Zulu manhood was not just about martial prowess, but had a moral conscience and put a premium on integrity, as Igodi Nchinju remarks. The preferred masculinity by Zulu standards combined martial prowess with honesty, high morality, as shown in the absence of pre-marital penetrative sexual interactions with a female subject, loyalty, aggressiveness, a sense of responsibility, courage, self-reliance, athleticism, alertness, endurance, and absence of emotion. So what you are being described here is the pre-colonial Zulu manhood. That's all of the qualities, all of the characteristics that was listed. This is what made them a formidable foe against Europeans in the British Army. So once they studied this, now they have to figure out, how do we destroy this? Okay? I hope y'all staying with me. Make sure y'all share this out, because this is going to be good. Make sure y'all share this out, because this is going to be some good information, family. Welcome back to the Campaign TV show. I am your host, Brother King Cam. Now, the Black God and Southern Cradle Patriarchy. The Zulu masculinity and manhood that every white man living in Africa had to respect, and which made the Zulu the principal obstacle to white dominion in Africa, was a manhood anchored in the truth of the Black God. Nkulu. The pre-colonial Zulu, like the pre-colonial Samburu, knew and reverenced the Black God. The God who is a divine black man, who is Nkulu, male Ndoda. The Amazulu, or people of South Africa, are a Bantu ethnic group. Their language is a Zulu, is from the Ngundi branch of the Bantu family, which includes also the Amaswazi, Amazosa, and the Amadubili. A case has been made that the religion and customs of the Zulu in its pre-colonial form preserves basic elements of the primordial religious culture, not only of Africa, but of all humanity. I believe there is some truth in this. So the research here being found in the motherland among the Zulu people is that the Zulus' original culture is derived of the deity Unkulu, who is the divine black supreme being. Unkulu. The divine supreme black deity that the Zulu men worship. And like the Ngandi cultures in general, the pre-colonial Zulu were a patriarchal culture, meaning that the man was the head of the household. The man was the breadwinner. The man was the one who took care of the family, and everybody raised their level of respect for the man who ran the house, and he ran the homestead. Now, moving up to 2020, you see that that whole dynamic has changed. But peep how they did it. Zulu society was highly hierarchical, and men enjoyed positions of power from the home into the wider society. Maleness was superior. In the home, the position of the paterfamilias, male head of a family or household in the Zulu family, was perfectly clear. His word was law, his will supreme, his person sacrosanct. His person was sacrosanct because he was literally God in the home. He was the Unkulu, God of his own house. This was the southern cradle, Unkulu, God of his own house. This was the southern cradle patriarchy rather than the northern cradle patriarchy of Europe, which Sheikh Anta Diop discussed, while the latter, northern cradle or European patriarchy, was characterized by the almost total devaluing and disempowering of women as women. In the former southern cradle of African patriarchy, the leaders of the home and of the society were paramountly men, but women also held public positions and wielded authority in society in their own right. So what we are seeing here is that traditionally in our African cultures, men ran the household and had positions of power amongst society. But women also had value. Women also had power. Women also were in positions of influence that also helped to push the culture forward and to make decisions on behalf of the people and things of that nature. The difference between our culture and the European patriarchy is that their European patriarchy was specifically male dominated, that moved towards the devaluing of women not holding positions, women not being of influence, and women not being of any integral part of society outside of the housewife. So if you think forward to today, this is where these women rights movements, these Me Too movements, these feminist movements and things of that nature, where they all come from is because of that white European patriarchy that has devalued them. This is not traditional in African patriarchy. So you have to see the difference of the mindset. And our enemy studied this. He studied this while he was among us. So I hope y'all stand with me, family. Share this video out. The traditional Zulu community was the Umuzi, or homestead, which was a cluster of nuclear families whose huts were built around the cattle or the crowd. So this is just going into the everyday life of the Zulu, how we raised our children, how we was able to take care of the family. It goes over the specific gender roles that men and women had. It went over the specific roles that were taken care of or carried out inside of the home. So what you are seeing is the white man really studying how we interact with our women, how we interact with our children, how we ran our households, because his ultimate goal is to take over. So in order for him to take over, he has to totally understand how we function so he can dismantle it from the inside out. So what happens is now they understand the language. They understand the way we communicate. So what's happening after this? Well, I told you, they going in through religion. This is the door that they're going to use. Now, I'm going to go ahead and break this down because a lot of people have a misunderstanding about this. We know that Christianity is a man-made religion. That's a fact. We know that based on the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as taught by the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, that Christianity is the white man's religion. We know this. Well, how did that come to be? Our lessons tell us that the reason why we took Jerusalem from the devils is because our brother Jesus was buried there, and that the devil was use our brother's name to shield his gutter religion and dirty practices. Okay? Jesus of 2,000 years ago didn't know nothing about Christianity. Jesus of 2,000 years ago was a black man teaching freedom, justice, and equality. And the Roman Catholics are those who got upset. Roman Catholic authorities, along with the Jews, are the ones that got upset with Jesus and led to his murder. Okay? So you have the Romans and the Jews, who are European, get upset with the black man and they decide to murder him. Christianity did not originate with Jesus out of Africa. Christianity is out of Europe under the Pope. In hoc signal vinces, Julius Caesar, with the cross. With this sign, we conquer. Or with this sign, I conquer. That's what that means. So because the head of the church is not Jesus, but it's the Pope in Rome, then this is why this dispensation of Christianity is the white man's religion. Because being a follower of Christ is not the white man's religion. But the white supremacy Christianity that was introduced to us in slavery is the white man's supremacy, which twists the word of God and adds in and takes out of the word of God what it can use to propagate white supremacy. This is what we are talking about when we say Christianity is the white man's religion. So when they went into Africa, they went in post-colonial Zulu land or Southern Africa, they went in with white supremacy Christianity through missionaries. And as missionaries opened the people up to change, then they came behind with the military might. The church's assault on Zulu gender culture. Western commentators, especially feminists, are highly critical of pre-colonial Zulu culture. They interpret the practice and the spirit of Halofnia as disempowering the women. On the other hand, traditional Zulu women, unimpressed by Western encroachments on the culture, reject this interpretation. Well, what they're talking about here is the communication between Zulu women and Zulu men, and the reverence Zulu women had for their men, where they did not mention their other men's names directly, where there was a direct attention brought to said person if you use their name, and the shyness and the meekness that the women exhibited towards their husbands wasn't because the women were weak, but it's because of the reverence of their husbands that allowed them to behave and communicate in this way, which was proper and civilized. And it worked in pre-colonial Zulu by the foundational principles that the Zulu men exhibited and the other characteristics that was listed of the Zulu men. This is how they was able to build that foundation. But check this out. Now you have Europeans coming in telling the African women that this type of behavior is disempowering to women and we should change it. This is not the way that we do things. Let me show you how we do things. See how they come in and then they change the language, they change the culture. They gonna take what you have as culture out and insert what they have as culture. See? And the strong African women rejected this. See? They said, the strong African women said, many Zulu women we interviewed virulently rejected the assertion that the practice of halophnia, which is high respect for the males and their family, could disadvantage them or place them in an inferior or vulnerable position. Various female interviewees claim that the halofa both is linguistic and its social component expresses more appropriately their respect for people, particularly in relation to the family of their husbands. Traditional Zulu women today still see halofa as essential Zuluness and insist that the discrepancy is not between halofa and principles of equality, rather it's a discrepancy between Zuluness and white culture. So you see the clash of the black man and the white man, or the black woman and the white woman. You see Zuluness and white culture clashing. So disrespect through avoidance and social difference, halofa was fundamental to traditional Zulu life and what was considered proper behavior within the community. Nevertheless, it did not survive the Western onslaught, except in some rural pockets. In fact, the colonial enterprise, its political, military, religious sectors specifically targeted the traditional Zulu gender ethos as a means to neutralize the Zulu masculinity that anchored it. The church spearheaded the social disruption. So as I mentioned before, they send the missionaries in to soften up the people. They send in the church because they want to, what they want to do is they want to slowly but surely change your perception on your God. They want to slowly but surely take out your God and insert their God. So another influence on Zulu masculinity was the missionary enterprise. Missionaries introduced a form of faith which was different from the Zulu religion. There you go. Red flag. They set new standards. I'm going to say that again. They set new standards, and this is post-colonial now. The British are in this territory. They set new standards which would change many basic behavior and structural patterns. Firstly, the roles played by men and women in the church were different from, and so changed the traditional separation of roles between genders. The influence of Christianity indicates that the effects of modifications in roles played by men and women were constructed in opposition to the traditional separation of roles between genders. So they introduced Christianity, which introduced a new type of gender role. The men and women had different roles in the church than in traditional Zulu religion, which opened the door for Christianity to creep in. So now that they take out the black God and insert the white God, now they can get in and rule. Do you follow me? Do you follow me? Now, I did not read this part or mention this part, but there is an explorer who mentioned the fact that when he was studying the African nations, I'm not sure if it was the Bantu or the Zulu, he noticed that the women reverenced a black deity that they went and worshipped and showed reverence for. And what this white explorer did was he watched them until he followed them to where they would go and worship this black deity. And in the process of them worshiping this black deity, they showed him where he was. And the way the myth went was that this black deity, and I can't remember his name, lived in this cave. He lived in this cave and ruled out of this cave, so the women would go and bring sacrifices to him and to worship him in this cave. Well, the white explorer found out where the cave was. And when he found out where the cave was, he came in and destroyed or blew up the cave. In essence, blowing up or destroying the energy or the essence of the black god that ruled there, to let the women know that it is over with for him and it's on with me as the new manhood and masculinity in this area. So they have to kill the black god deity, then they have to introduce the white god deity, as a replacement.